This is Matthew Cratter from Bitcoin University, and today I wanted to talk about the global emergency or emergencies that I believe are incoming. This is a follow-up video to the video I made a couple days ago about the banks being weaponized, and in that video I talked about movement passports, medical passports, internet passports, and money passports, which could also be CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. And the idea was that governments want to move people into these systems of control. And so today I wanted to talk about what is the best way to quickly move people into systems of greater government control like this. Well, the classic playbook has always been create artificial threats or use existing real threats. This phrase, never let a crisis go to waste, get people really scared, get them scared in the mainstream media, and then they'll invite the government further into their lives to quote unquote save them. Now, how do you enslave people at a global level? Well, one way of doing that would be to keep coming up with new global threats, all of which demand global solutions, as we're going to see. And so all you need to do is have the politicians, have the media assert that there's a significant, whether it's real or imagined, doesn't really matter, a significant threat, an external threat to humanity. And so we all need to band together in order to defeat this scary external enemy. And they always use this phrase, and when they use it, you should be quite terrified. We're all in this together, because usually we're not all in this together. There's some haves and there's some have-nots. And when they say we need to band together and we're all in this together, what they mean usually is that there needs to be a temporary or not so temporary suspension of your civil liberties, but not for the civil liberties of your overlords. And this is something we saw play out over the past few years with Partygate and Newsom's thing at the French Laundry. If you're enjoying this video so far, I just ask you to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment. These sort of things really help to extend the channel's reach. I want to talk about another global emergency that happened a while ago. Something happened somewhere, and the response was the Patriot Act and a $5 trillion war on terror. Here I'll link to the Wikipedia article on the Patriot Act. The main parts of this, for those of you who don't remember, were massively expanded surveillance, indefinite detention without a trial, property searches without warrants, and if you're a really bad person, you might just be labeled an enemy combatant, whether you are or not, and thus forfeit all constitutional rights, even if you're a U.S. citizen. So this playbook has been used in very recent history, as we know. Now, what are some other global threats that might be used to help transition the world to a one world government? Obviously, climate change, which many scientists believe is a very great threat. Some other scientists believe that it's not a threat, but the point of this is that this is a global thing that needs to be taken seriously, and as such, there's this excuse for all the countries to band together, and especially for people to be forced to give up their rights so that their elite overlords can solve this problem. Now, back in the 1970s, people were extremely worried about the new ice age coming on, which is quite interesting. Here's a magazine, a popular science magazine from 1975, when people were very worried, and many scientists were very worried about global cooling and how this would mean mass starvation because all the farms would freeze. I'll link to that as well as this Newsweek article from the same period of time in 1975. So the point is that the threats, sometimes they're very hot threats, sometimes they're very cold threats, but the common denominator is that they are global threats, and we need the United Nations or the World Economic Forum's help to get us out of it. So weather is a great way of scaring people into compliance. And again, this can be real weather or imagined weather. It doesn't really matter. The whole point is global control and global surveillance. Another great way of scaring people into compliance would be a global threat of cyber attacks, either a real cyber attack or the threat of a coming cyber attack. Will we see a false flag cyber attack in the coming 12 to 24 months? Quite possibly, and if so, here's the aftermath. The government will say, for your own protection, you're now going to need an internet passport to use the internet. And this is something that could possibly be enforced at the ISP, at the internet service provider level, and that will link all browsing and web activity to your personal identity. This is already common practice in China under the CCP. And even in the US, under a system like this, you click on the wrong website, make the wrong comment somewhere, and you might just get yourself labeled an enemy combatant or some similar category. Am I just making this up? Is this idea of a cyber attack complete nonsense? Well, the World Economic Forum seems to be worried about a cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics, which those are their words, not mine. This hypothesis also helps to explain the really weird emphasis on UFOs lately. And again, UFOs could be real, they could not be real. The whole point here is that they can be construed as a global threat. Well, so why are so many governments suddenly so interested in this and talking about it quite openly for the first time in a long time? Well, global threats demand global solutions. And the best way to fight the aliens is probably by creating a one world government, or at least ceding a lot more control to the United Nations and other global groups like this. Here's an article I'll link to from The Hill about how UFOs pose a potential national security threat. And as such, we probably should all just cower in our homes and turn over control to our government. Is there about to be an alien invasion from outer space? Better hand over our civil liberties to the UN and the World Economic Forum, because we are all in this together as a planet. Climate change, pandemics, cyber attacks, UFOs, what do all of these have in common? As we said, they're potential global threats that world governments can use to push us into more surveillance and government control. Now, this used to be accomplished using wars, and especially global wars, but that's no longer the best option now that the world has nuke. If you're trying to take over the whole world, you don't want it to be a complete landscape of destruction and radiation. It's much better to have people turn over control to you without having to fight a hot war. Global threats demand a one world government. And I think it's possible a rolling series of global emergencies, and this really is what we've been seeing for the past 23 years, a rolling series of quote unquote global emergencies is the most likely path to a one world government. Remember, we're all in this together. So what I think is going to happen next, if I had to guess, I would say that the next plan would be some sort of cyber attack, maybe a real cyber attack, maybe a false flag version of one, followed by a huge government push globally to force people into internet passports and into KYCing themselves online, providing personal information. This would be one of the major pillars of the coming global prison, where we already essentially have meatspace movement passports, and we saw what those looked like in 2020 and 2021. And you add to that internet movement passports, plus CBDCs, which we've talked about before, central bank digital currencies. And with just these three tools, a small group of people could easily subdue the Earth's 8 billion people and keep them and their descendants locked in a system of surveillance and control for thousands of years. This really has been the dream of totalitarians for hundreds of years. And today I think it's unfortunately finally possible to do it. So I would urge people, when there is a global crisis, when there is a global emergency, you can look at it from that angle, from the angle that's being officially propagandized. But it's also very important to look at it from this angle and the government's wish to, quote unquote, never let a crisis go to waste. Whether it's Jefferson who said it or someone else, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so people need to wake up to these possibilities before it's too late. I lived through the rollout of the Patriot Act, and I saw how easily that went through, which was very, very disturbing. Now, there are two general baskets of solutions we can use to fight this. The first one, of course, is decentralized software solutions, Bitcoin and Nostr, and it's important to get these really rolled out and working before there's some attempt to KYC the internet. There will be pockets of internet available globally, and so this is going to be quite a dance to use these software protocols if the net and the access to the internet is slowly or quickly being closed. But I think we do have this golden opportunity right now to try to roll this out as quickly as possible and to get as many people aware of these threats using the free speech of Nostr and the freedom money of Bitcoin. Then there are the typical and traditional meatspace solutions, of course, strong family and local ties, which are always extremely important and more important, much more important than who you vote for or what politicians you support 3,000 miles away, having these strong local ties. Other meatspace solutions, of course, are land, water, garden, chickens, cows, tools of self-defense, and these sort of things. So I think this is the two prongs that we need to use to defend ourselves, these meatspace solutions, as well as decentralized software solutions like Bitcoin and Nostr. So on that note, I wanted to wish you all a happy 4th of July if you're in the US. If you want a less depressing note, you can look at my 4th of July video from 2 years ago, in which I talk about Bitcoin, central banks, and American independence. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. and let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.